Hi there. Today we're introducing Outlook Web App, which is a portion of the Office 365 client. My name is Desiree Herman. We're going to be going through, first of all, how you log in to Office 365. So in order to get to your Outlook Web App, you just log in to a web page, and the link would be to portal.office.com, and you use your email address and your password. The first thing that you would see once you get into the Office 365 client itself that you're going to use to manage where you're going to go to is going to be the navigation bar. We'll go through that when I actually get into Outlook. The next thing that I have here is the actual Outlook web app. So just a picture of what it looks like. It is my inbox, my drafts, my sent items, my deleted items. What I have here is I have absolute connectivity to my Outlook mailbox, and we do have all the features that we have in Outlook as well. The next slide I have is basically just how you can organize your mail looking at your folders. So we have the ability to create new folders. When I create new folders in Outlook Web App, they will also be available to me in Outlook. When I compose mail messages, they do have a reading pane, and that's actually where your mail messages get created. We do have all of the fields that we have in Outlook as well, to carbon copy subject. I can also bring out the other fields, and up on the top I have my send button so that I can send a new mail message. And then we have something that's a little bit newer, and this is what's called the conversation view in Outlook. We will talk about how you can actually use the conversation view in Outlook, or if you don't like it, how you can turn it off. At this point, are there any questions about mail?
Hi, Desi. I do have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, do rules work in Office Web App?
Yes, rules do work in the Office Web App. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my Outlook client itself. Again, up on the top we have our navigation bar, as I mentioned. The rules themselves, they're actually going to be in the options. So one of the things that I do have is I can use the same things that I've used in Outlook, and that would be that I could also get to rules. One of the things that we would want to be able to manage inside of Outlook is we would want to be able to manage, I'm going to go to my mail here just so you can see mail. When I go to the gear button up on the top in that navigation bar that I showed before, I click on the gear button, and here I have some of the Outlook settings. There's automatic replies. That's one of the biggest rules that people do use in Outlook. Automatic replies are out of office. If I click on that, I can get to the automatic replies, and this is where I can set up my automatic replies either from here in Outlook Web App. It works exactly the same in Outlook as well. Other than that, the other things that I can do with rules are also available to me inside of my messages. Some of the other things that I have that are available are going to be listed from the little arrows that I see here. If you notice, there's a move. It's an arrow up on the top. There's categories. I'd like you to notice the ellipse that's here as well. So if I click on the ellipse, this is where I can get to the more commands as well. The ellipse at the end of this top row of commands is where I can actually get to the rules. So I can create rules right here, and this is exactly as I can create rules in Outlook. All right. So the other things that I'm going to look at here then is, as I mentioned, you can see there's the different folders. So if I go into my other folders, you can see that's where my other mail is. Also, if I'm in my inbox and I find a message that needs to go into one of my folders, I do have the drag and drop feature, just like I have in the Outlook application as well. There is a new section that's up on the top, and that's called Favorites. The Favorites is something that you can use and you can manage different folders in your favorites based on the fact that you might have a lot of folders underneath your inbox. You could have a short list of your favorites that you work with a lot up on the top. And then I have the same ability to drag and drop there as well. We do have junk mail here as well. The other thing is when you right click, so here I have my deleted items. If I right click, you'll see I can also empty a folder. So there is some right click functionality inside of the Outlook web app, which is something that we haven't had before. All right, when I'm in a new mail message, if I click on the new button, the mail message shows up on the right side. Up on the top, I have the send. I have an attach button. If I click on the attach button, there is something that is a little bit different because we're in Office 365. It gives me the option of bringing things from my OneDrive. In this case, it would be sending somebody a link to get to a file from my OneDrive. Otherwise, I can also go to my computer and I can find files on my computer that I can send as well. So it's an attachment, and then I can either upload this file up to my OneDrive, or I can attach it as a copy. One of the things that we think about there is saving space. So there's an attachment. The buttons, the to and the carbon copy buttons, are actually buttons that I can click on, and that gets me out to my address book. And then when I'm in the body of the message, here I'll put a subject in first. I do have the font characteristics, so I have the ability to bold, italicize, etc. Alright, so that's mail. Again, I do have all of my folders here, including drafts, including my sent items as well. One of the other things I did mention is the conversations. If I look at my mail that I have here, I'm going to go back up to my inbox. If I look next to the word inbox here, it says all. And this is looking at all of my mail. If you notice here, I could filter this and only look at unread mail. Could look at mail that's only to me. I can also sort, so I have the ability to resort here. And then there's conversations or messages. The conversations, what it does is it brings everything into one conversation so that you can see your messages wherever they're from in that same section. Some people aren't used to it, so you do have the ability to go back and just look at it by messages and not as conversations. So that is something that you do have the ability to do, is to switch in and out of that conversation mode. All right, I'm going to move over into the rest of Outlook at this point, so we're going to talk about the other things. At this point, I'd like to know if there are any questions about the rest of Outlook, being mail, calendar, people, and then tasks.
I have a question.
Okay.
Do categories work in calendar?
Yes, the categories work everywhere, just like they do in the Outlook application itself. So whether I'm using the categories in mail or if I'm using them in my calendar, so let's say you're already using your categories in your calendar, you have the ability to use them here as well. And they do show up. I actually, in my calendar, so what I did here is I clicked in the navigation bar up on the top. I went to the button that's all the way on the left side, and that takes me to the application switcher that switches between mail, calendar, tasks, and then people, which is my contacts. I clicked on calendar here, and it takes me into my calendar. If you'll notice, this looks a lot like the application version of Outlook as well. I'm going to open up one of the meetings that I have here. And so you can see the ability that I have inside of the event itself. I can see this event. If I open the series, because this is a recurring event, then I get into the management of all of this. And if you'll notice up at the top here, I do have categorize, and I do have all the categories. There are 25 different categories. It's the same in Outlook Web App as well as here in or in the Outlook application itself. So I do have categories. If I save that, those categories are now on that meeting, so they do still work in the calendar. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new appointment, just so you can see all of the functionality that we have here. I do have the details section here. There is an add a location. Then on the other side there is people. So if I'm going to add people, I just click on the plus sign over on the right side here, and now this will change this appointment into a meeting. So then I can add somebody that I want. And now this is a meeting. If you'll notice, there's a send button up at the top. So this has changed this into a meeting. And again, if we have rooms, I can add a room. Otherwise, I can specify somebody's office it needs to be in. If you'll notice, that will search Bing as well. So if there is a physical location, it will search for me. And then I can also make sure that I put my free busy time correct. And then I send that. When I receive a meeting, so I actually received a meeting a little earlier, a webinar recording. When I receive a meeting, you have the accept, you have tentative, decline, propose new time, reply to all. There is this new charm thing. The charms may be useful, maybe not useful, depending on what your organization is doing with them. And then again, I also have categorize. I'm going to close out this one. So there's my calendar. One of the other features that you will see here is they do have the based on the locale, which is where your time and date is. It will show you the weather for your area. And that's the calendar. The next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to skip over and move into, first of all, the contacts list. People is now what's contacts. So people and contacts are synonymous with each other. If I click on people here, typically what people is where I'm going to hold on to the people that I contact externally outside of my organization. One of the other things that you also have the ability to do is you also have the ability to create what would be called groups. So here I have a project group. If I look at that project group here, you can see there are members to it. So I do have the ability to still create groups here. If I click on the new button up at the top, you can see it's just going to create a contact. But again, I have the ability to create the groups. If I click the arrow here, it's a contact list, or a group. If I click the manage button, here I can import contacts as well. And this is not just in the Outlook client, this is in the Outlook web app. So we do have full functionality of Outlook here. I could edit these. If I'm selected on one and I click edit, that's what it will edit. If I select a different one and I click edit, that would edit that one. I could delete them. I can add them to favorites. Where my favorites show up, and just so you can see this, my favorites will actually show up on the top up here in my contacts. So I do have people that will be in a different section. The lists, and then there's also links, which would give me links to the people that are in wherever, whichever contact that is. So this is contacts. When I do create a contact, one of the nice things that we do have the ability to do is we can add more fields. So if they do have more than just a business phone number, I could also add another field here for a mobile number. If they do have a physical address, if I put an address in, one of the things that we have the ability to do then is we have the ability to use Bing to actually search for that address. So there is, again, full functionality of all of Outlook that is also found in the contacts. If you'll notice in the directory section, it does show me all rooms, all users, all distribution lists. This is for my entire organization. So this is something that is kind of an addition to what you can see. Any of the arrows that you do see here, feel free to click the arrow to see what it does. It's never going to break anything. Whenever you click an arrow, it's just going to show you something in a different way. So, all right. One other thing I'd like to mention, since I'm now not really in Mail, but I'm in Contacts, if I click the gear button when I'm in a different portion of Outlook, it actually shows me different options here. Another thing that I can also look at is the actual options. If I click on the Options button here, this actually takes me into the options. This is the Outlook options that we have, and because I was in Contacts, it took me into the People section. There are also different options that you have that you can create and use just like in Outlook that is here in the Outlook web app. All right. So that was Contacts. And then the last thing that I'm going to touch on in Outlook is going to be the task list. So if I click on the button here and I go, it's all the way on the right side of that top row. If I click on Tasks, this is the task list. Are there any questions about tasks?
Yes, I have a question. Do flagged messages show up in the task list?
Flagged messages. Yes, flagged messages do show up in the task list. So what we have is we have a distinction between what are tasks and then what are flagged items. So if you notice here, we have My Tasks. Your task list in Outlook is a portion of also using your mailbox functionality. So what we have the ability to do is whenever we flag something for follow-up, and I'm just going to really quickly go back here to my mailbox. When I do flag a message for follow-up, so here I'll go into a message that I have. In the message itself, so if I get into the message, all right. So what I have the ability to do here then is I have the ability to do what I need to do with this message itself. So when I get into a message, and just so you can see this, you'd also have the ability right from here. When I'm looking at my mailbox, I can actually flag a message. When I flag a message inside of Outlook, what it does is it actually also then shows me that follow-up message over here in Task List. The other things that I can do in my task list is I can create tasks. When I create tasks, either in Outlook or in Outlook web app, what I have the ability to do is I have the ability to create a task subject. There is a due date field here. If I click on Show More Details, I'm going to see all the same details that I see in Outlook. So I have a new task that I need to create. Some reports. I need to put a due date on it. I could put today as the start date. The date that it's completed isn't complete yet. You can see it's not started. I can also mark that as in progress. One of the other things that I have the ability to do is I can hold on to the amount of hours that it took me to do something, mileage, billing, companies. This is actually just in another tab where you're seeing it in the Outlook application itself. So I can create all of my tasks here as well. And then the difference between the task list, if I go back up here and I click on flagged items and tasks, this shows me all of my mail items that are flagged for follow-up. And then the other thing that I see here, you can see there's a task on the bottom. The other flagged for follow-up messages, they do have a little message icon, so I can see that those are flags for follow-up. A task itself is just a task, but it does have a flag, and that's why it's also in the flag section. And again, I can go just to my tasks here. If I go back to the tasks, I also have the ability to edit. If I click on the edit button, I can get back into that task and I can edit it. If you notice, you can also attach to a task. You also have categories. So not just the question was asked, can you use categories in calendars? You can use categories in your mailbox. You can use categories in your calendar, in your contacts, as well as in your tasks. And it does, they work exactly the same from Outlook, the application, to the Outlook web app as well. All right, so again, just kind of to follow up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back through what we see here. All right, so again, the Outlook web app, the mailbox itself, you have the ability to use not just the mail portion of it, but also all of the rest of it. So if you see here, this is the mailbox. I mentioned that you can manage your folders, a mail message, what it looks like. The conversation view, there's full functionality of that conversation view. And it is something that is a newer feature, so some people aren't used to it. Knowing that you have the ability to go back from it is useful as well. The mailbox in the conversation view, if you notice here, one of the other things I mentioned is there's 25 gigs of storage for each user, and that is a huge limit compared to what we've always lived with. Then we have our calendar. Our calendar is, again, just a extension of the calendar from the Outlook desktop application as well, and then our contacts. Noting that you can keep your contacts from anywhere, remembering that typically we use our contacts list in Outlook for external people. And then there's also the tasks view and how you can see all of your tasks in the Outlook web app as well. All right. Thank you very much for your time, and that is the Outlook web app.